Great. We have a first question coming in from Michael Rosenberg.
Just a comment that the issue of different plug loads in the baseline in the proposed building would be another one of those areas that should be flagged as something that can be allowed by the rating authority but needs to be brought to their attention for approval.
That's a good point, Michael. I should have mentioned that when COMNET was going through this particular section, we were sort of assuming the role of a rating authority. The thinking is that if a rating authority adopts the COMNET procedures, then they would be basically ratifying our rules for taking these credits.
I guess I think it would be preferable to have the option of the rating authority to adopt COMNET, but still have the power to make decisions about which of those options that are their prerogative they choose to allow. I'm thinking from a standpoint of, for instance, one of the things we were hoping might be able to come out of this would be the 90.1 committee issuing interpretation saying that COMNET is an approved methodology. That would sort of mean that they then agree to these items that you've set up as defaults for the baseline that would be at the prerogative of the rating authority, and I think it would be much harder to get that kind of an interpretation from the committee.
That's a good point, and I think that, I mean, for instance, a rating authority or ECB, for instance, could say, yeah, we think COMNET is a correct implementation of the performance rating method, but when you go to the receptacle levels, you need to use method A or whatever, or method 1.
I'm just trying to think the best way to work this out. I mean, if to approve these numbers, that means the debate about what the proper numbers has to occur at the committee level, and I think that would really bog down the process, whereas everything else that's already in there has been agreed to by Appendix G. So if these are recommendations for a rating authority or something like that that are their option, I think it would be a much easier path for approval.
I see. So you're suggesting that these what I'm calling innovations be recommendations for the rating authority and try and separate them some way from strict interpretations of the PRM.
That's right. Flag somehow, and I forget what the issue was that came up last week, but there was another one that I brought up as well. Where it's fine to have these things in there as even if you use them as defaults or as an optional check that says that you want to use these, and it's flagged at the rating authority. Note that this can be allowed at the approval of the rating authority, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good suggestion.
The next question is from Ellen.
Hi. I had a question about your table that has the credit for Energy Star appliances. I'm thinking it might be treated differently for new buildings than for existing buildings. I think your table might be more applicable for existing buildings. It's sort of assuming somebody comes in, they have their existing equipment, and they're slowly going to make a commitment to change that equipment as they need, as they have to replace it, year by year by year, versus somebody who comes in with totally new equipment where everything might be Energy Star.
Yes, I agree. I think these tables are basically assuming that it is a new building, and that you're starting off with Energy Star equipment, and you're going to continue to purchase Energy Star equipment as equipment needs to be replaced.
So then the baseline, in essence, is assuming you're putting Energy Star in, but that you don't necessarily commit to replace it with Energy Star.
That's correct. So, I mean, a PC, for instance, only lasts, I don't know, 2-3 years maybe, or something like that. So that's why the credit is much smaller if you're only willing to make a 1-year commitment.
Okay. And I did have another question about the appendices that are in the form of spreadsheets. Is there a place on the website where we can actually download those as spreadsheets?
There is. We're going to when you go to COMNET.org MGP, we're going to have a link there. We're going to be adding a link where you can download the appendices. But right now, if you want to download the appendix, you need to download the full PDF version, and then it will be contained there.
Oh, as a spreadsheet, not as a PDF.
I can address that, Ellen. When you download the MGP, it's a PDF file, but it's actually a consolidation of several files. The spreadsheet will be something that you could open up in Excel and cut, paste, manipulate data as you choose. Okay, the next question is from Krishnan.
Charles, I'm referring to Appendix B, which provides the building classifications. Is that specific to a particular code, or are you doing any harmonization across the 3 or 4 base codes that you're using or supporting?
What we did when we created Appendix B is we looked at all of the space classifications in 90.1 2001 and also 2007,
okay.
and we combined them. Because what we wanted to do, we wanted to have one list of space classifications that COMNET software could support. And once you make your choice, you then get mapped to the 90.1 2001 values or the 2007 values. There's also, for tax credits, the IRS code also makes reference to California's ACM manual, the 2005 version of the ACM manual. So we also have the California space classifications embraced in here as well. There's a backup spreadsheet that we could provide to those of you that are interested that shows how these different spaces are mapped to each other and mapped to the COMNET categories. I think for most people it will be pretty simple what we've done, and there weren't too many discrepancies between them, but there were a few where we had to make some judgments.
And the second question is related to this occupant, numbers, lit and sensible loads and schedules. Are they being, I wouldn't call it regulated, are they being recommended for baseline as well as proposed?
Those are just defaults. So the number of occupants is a neutral dependent variable. So you can either use the defaults or you can put in other data if you have better data. But whatever you put in is also being used for the baseline building.
Okay. So in Appendix B, you're providing defaults for all of the
That's right. It's just a default. Most of the values in Appendix B are defaults. If you've got better data, you can use that better data.
Oh, this is good. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Okay, next question is from Tanjan.
Hi, Tanjan.
Yeah. So the question by looking at this table, so under this outdoor air, right? Number 4, outdoor air. So the standard 62.1, it is also some space categories. So you sort of massage the space categories with what you have in this spreadsheet, right?
Outdoor air we're going to get to when we get into the HVAC sections. I didn't try to cover it much today. The values here are actually CFM per square foot of building area, which is a different process than ASHRAE 62.1 uses. They have both a CFM per square foot figure plus a CFM per occupant figure. Then you add the two together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The second question I have is related to the the credit for the Energy Star appliance. Can you go back to the table? I have a confusion because this multiplier that shows almost like a 1. Does it mean then the power would?
If you look at this table, servers, for instance, and POS is point of sale cash registers. There's basically no credit for those. So the one carries across because those are really not addressed by the Energy Star program.
Oh, so 1 means no credit.
No credit, yeah. If the multiplier is 1, then you multiply your baseline number by 1 to get your rated building number, and there's no reduction.
Okay, but in your formula, you say 1 minus credit. Maybe that's why causing some confusion.
Yeah, these are the credits, and
okay, yeah,
and then this table is 1 minus those credits. So when you go into the main equation here, the n factor is the multiplier from table 40.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the first and probably the last question is related to the data for occupants. Sometimes we also calculate this indoor air quality, so that the CO2, emission rate from occupants, would be needed in this case. So maybe in future you can add another column just to put the CO2 emission rate per people.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Okay, next up is Joe Wong.
I have one sort of specific question, and then I have a more general question. On the specific question, I notice on the hot water inputs, you have both a BTU per square foot number apparently from the ACM, and then you have a gallons per person number. And I've found it much better to use the gallons per person number because you could adjust for water temperature and climate effects and things like that. So I wondered, do you have any comment about that?
Well, I agree with you. The reason the BTUs number is in there is because of the tax credits reference to the California ACM.
Okay.
So if you're doing tax credit calculations, you're required to use the California data, which is expressed in BTUs. If you're doing green building ratings, I agree with you completely. You should use the gallons number.
Okay, then the more general question is, I think what you've done is great, and at ASHRAE 4.7, we often get work statements that are brought up about which inputs should be improved, on occupancy, on lighting schedules, and things like that. And I was just wondering, in all your work, are there certain areas that you think would stand the most to benefit from more research or more data gathering?
Well, yeah, I think we can do we took a stab at receptacle and plug loads, but we could do a lot more in that area. Elevators and escalators, it's not a huge number, but it can sometimes be 5% or as much as 5% of the energy use in a large tower. We don't know very much about that. And I think there's a lot of improvements that could be made in the area of commercial refrigeration as well.
Yeah, see, I think that's one area that, we should probably have more discussion, and, it could be a fruitful collaboration, for TC47 to look into some of these areas that you think are problematic. What about hourly profiles?
Well, that's another good area for research, especially when you get into elevators and escalators.
Okay.
I don't think we really understand how to schedule and model those.
Next question is from Ron Nelson.
I understand that the COMNET team is trying to move some of these innovations towards standards, and I'm wondering what that process might be, because if we talk about that a little bit, it might shed light on the question Joe just asked.
Well, that's a good point, Ron. We've some of these innovations that I mentioned, for instance, the methods for calculating plug loads, commercial refrigeration. could be pulled off and made into a standard, an ANSI standard in and of themselves, and then it could be an ANSI standard that can be referenced in COMNET the same way we reference 90.1 PRM, and this might address the issue that Mike Rosenberg brought up a few minutes ago.
Okay, well, I think that's it for questions. There's a couple things that came up earlier about commenting on the details of the MGP and also where to download the spreadsheets and other supporting files. So, I'll really quickly show you that. If you go to comnet.org, you'll see there's a couple links of importance here. COMNET MGP, you can download the COMNET MGP. When you click on this, it's going to take you to the screen where you can download the full portfolio. Now, this contains all the text that has been described during these sessions, as well as the supporting spreadsheet files. There's also, some other supporting documents like the SketchUp files for the software testing. Another area is comment on the MGP. This requires you to log in, but once you've logged in, you can actually click on individual sections that we've been discussing during these sessions, and you actually leave a comment. If you have any suggestions for improvement, a lot of the things we've been talking about here on these calls are very great suggestions, and this is an opportunity to to log it on there for us to review and actually make some changes in the future. And finally, all of these sessions have been recorded, so if you click on the presentations link, you'll see that each of these sessions has been recorded along with these discussions here at the end. So if you've missed any of the previous sessions, I certainly welcome you to check this out and refresh your memory on past topics of discussion. But I guess that's our session for today. Thanks everybody for joining us. And again, next week we're going to continue to look at the building descriptors. Charles, what was the topic again for next week?
Next week is building envelope, and the week following that we'll get into HVAC.
Okay, thanks everybody.